On today's fiery episode, couldn't really think of a good one there, we dive into the deepest depths of the Fire Emblem series. We pitch you on the 1990 franchise by Shozo Kaga, look at how it's changed, and finally settle a debate on which era of games is better. And while we don't actually do that, magic and sunshine awaits on the Pitch Pod. Welcome to the Pitch Pod. We are the pod party, and we are here to pitch you on all things nerdy, geeky, dorky, dweeby, and lame. Friends, I know we talked about this on the last episode, or maybe it was 2 episodes ago. I'm not really quite sure. Time is a construct. But I did a thing last week. I'm not really proud of it, but I went to the theaters last week. I went to the Cinemark. I did. Yep, it was for Tenet. I don't know. It was one of those things I missed so much. And what I will say before I talk about the movie very briefly, at least the movie theater I went to, it was a Cinemark. Very kudos to them. Everything was like cleaned to the brim. Everyone was following policy. What they do is, like, whenever you buy a ticket, they block off the 3 tickets the 3 seats to your right or to your left, unless you're buying it with someone. So it was kind of weird because it was like a stadium that was supposed to fit like 200 people, and there was maybe 10 of us in the whole thing, which for like a huge theatrical release felt odd. But, you know, I think it's at least movies are back in a sense. Hopefully down the line we'll be able to get the traditional experience, but this was enough for me.
I'll probably end up going before the month is over. The historic theater, I think I mentioned 1 or 2 episodes ago, the historic theater that we have downtown that I mentioned being worried about is in fact closing. So it's their last month.
Shit.
Maybe they'll reopen in the spring, but it doesn't seem like it'll be under the same management. Which will be very unfortunate. Yeah. So I'm probably gonna, like we said, commit the sin and go as a goodbye.
The final stand.
Try to round up as many people who never made it there as I can to risk it with me. Spread the sin on to other people. Welcome to the garden.
It sucks. It really does, because like it's for the greater good and all that. But I mean, dude, Tenet. By the way, in case you are wondering, I'm not going to spoil the movie, but I'm also not going to spoil the movie because I don't really know what happened in the movie, because that was the biggest mindfuck ever. Like, I could follow Inception. I knew what was happening. I know what's happening in most of Nolan's films. I did not understand what was going on throughout the entirety of that movie. Time is very weird, and time inversion is even weirder. That's what the film is about in the grand scheme, is time inversion. It wants you to know it's not time travel. Time travel is not real. It's time inversion. So, yeah, I don't have a master's of physics or a bachelor's in physics, I got a C- in remedial physics in high school. So, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Remedial physics. Damn.
The regular physics. Yeah, physics uno.
Oh, okay.
I was never a science man.
I thought you meant I failed physics, and then they gave me an easier physics course, and I still only got to see
essentially.
I get it. Great. You can't tell me about time travel.
All right. Yeah. The one thing I do, and I want to hear if you guys ever do see it, and for people listening in, whenever you watch it, I want to know your opinion, because I think Nolan has been doing this with a lot of his films recently with like his sound mixing, where he like blares the sound effects and the external voices, but like the actual dialogue is so muffled. There were times where I just didn't know what they were saying in general, right? That was compounded, obviously, when you have a guy in a gas mask speaking to like a Russian, or, you know, I couldn't even understand like Michael Caine, who has like the most elegant voice of all time. I couldn't understand what he was saying half the time. because the sound mixing was so unbalanced, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe my ears are shot.
It's not.
Whatever. But that's what I've been hearing from
It's
other
not
people
an
too.
unusual opinion. I've seen articles talking about how theaters and people are pissed about how he mixed the sound. So you are adding to the chorus of people who have noticed that for that movie in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was my movie theater, honestly. Like, it's their first film back up. I thought they just made a mistake or something like that. It was bad, man. Like, I legit thought I thought my ears were like, I don't know, whatever. One of y'all take it from here. I'm done. Tenet was okay. Go watch it. It was cool. Not my film. End of review.
Victor, you got joy in life, I'm seeing? That seems
Yeah,
unusual. Dude. Can you tell
I
more
was
about
happy for like a good 12 hours. It was rather nice. I discovered the game Among Us. I don't know. YouTube always gives me like this weird recommendation, as I'm sure is like everyone's interaction.
Not the Wolf
with
Among Us,
YouTube.
just Among Us?
No, not the Wolf Among Us, just Among Us. So there's this streamer I like to watch. It's Avoiding the Puddle. Very interesting. I got into his videos because of like Soul Calibur 2 specifically, and he was like a champion of that, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, he's been playing Fall Guys, and I've been watching. So I think that's where this particular recommendation comes from. Like the Among Us art style, it's 2D and it's very simplistic, but basically it's like The Thing. It's like you're playing in The Thing, basically. You join a lobby. It's free on iPhone and on Android. On Steam, it's like $5. But basically, you play a member of a crew in a variety of settings. One is like in an Arctic base, the other one is like in a sky base, and the other one is in a space station. Those are the maps. And there are imposters in the crew. So you have to do these tasks while the imposters go around killing people. And you can call meetings whenever you find the corpse, or if you just feel like calling an emergency meeting, there's like a button in the center of the map you can press. And the idea is that you all vote about who the imposter is to throw them out the airlock, or throw them into the lava pit, or whatever the relevant device is for getting rid of them. If you kill the imposters, then the crew wins. And if the imposters kill, I don't exactly know how many people the imposters have to kill for them to win. Like,
Right.
But basically, if it's a tie, it goes to the imposters. Like if there's 2 people left and there's 2 imposters, or some shit like that. So really good
This
game.
sounds very much
getting
my jam.
to talk to complete strangers and setting them on one another while you're the bad guy gets you a feeling of satisfaction you wouldn't believe.
So this is essentially Odd Man Out from YouTube, but like in a video game.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's like there's some YouTube channel. Like a few channels make fun of them because they're kind of cringy, but like the newest episode, because I have it on my queue right now, 6 sex workers versus 1 fake sex worker. And then the 7 sex workers have to find out who the fake sex worker is. And they have it for like every single type of person, because they've just like, it was a cool concept at first, because it was like 7 psychics and one of them's a fake psychic. I mean, they're all fake psychics, but like one of them's faking to be a fake psychic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was fun at first, and now it's just like...
It's a tired gimmick. Yeah.
I mean, it's basically the game Mafia or Werewolf.
Yes, it's basically Mafia or Werewolf, but in video game form, and done really well.
That's what I love, playing Werewolf solidly with rolls and everything. So this sounds very much my jam. And you are correct, being able to convince fools to kill them, the innocent to kill themselves, and leave you alone. Absolute greatest feeling. I love it when you. I don't want that taken out of context.
One of the good guys, and you know who the imposter is, even though they did like some preposterous shit to set up an alibi, and you're like, actually, I can piece together I remember this one particular situation where I'm on the right side of the ship with like 3 other people, and one of them turns up dead. Now, one of them turned up dead. I headed to like communications, which is like on the bottom right part of the ship, and this other guy showed up. I didn't know there was a dead person yet, like it hadn't been reported. So this other guy shows up, and he like makes a beeline towards me, and I'm like, what the fuck? And then he just moves to a different part of communications. And I'm like, why are you here? Like, you might have a task to do here, because you can't see if they're doing a task. But I just thought it was super weird. Then the other person on the right side of the ship saw the corpse and put in a report and was like, yo, somebody turned up dead. And I know I'm innocent, so I immediately accuse the other two people who were on my side of the ship, which was the guy in the red suit and the guy in the brown suit. And the guy in the red suit is like morally outraged or some shit. He's like, how dare you? Why would I report myself? That's so stupid. And I'm like, then it's the brown guy. He killed someone, then he came to communications to set up an alibi with me. They didn't believe me. They threw me out the airlock. But immediately after, I'm just kidding. It wasn't immediately after. It literally took until the very end of the game for them to get rid of the brown guy, and I was right. Damn. Vindicated, dude. And the best part about being with strangers is when you're able to do some like Death Note shit where you're just like, yeah, I know exactly who the imposter is. They never doubt you again. So it makes it easier for you to be the imposter because they think you're telling the truth. Because look at that one time he made that insane
You said
call.
This is a phone game?
Yeah, it's a free phone game, dude. It's a free phone game.
But Grant, being an elitist, will pay the $5 to play it on Steam.
It's $5 on Steam, and it might be worth it. I don't know. I think they might have like a voice chat function, because you're quiet during the actual gameplay. You're only allowed to communicate at the meetings.
Okay. We'll see. It definitely sounds like, I don't know. I also have terrible trust issues, so
this is good. This will compound that.
This will reinforce that.
But it'll be fun.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Just give me a bunch more anxiety. That's what I need right now.
Where did your trust issues develop, Grant? Mine started whenever the Pokeball would shake 3 times and bust open.
Oh, that's the worst feeling. My trust issues actually definitely, started in childhood. It all started when I was 5. But we're not going to go there.
Ooh, super weird.
Yeah, no, I relate to the Pokemon feeling for sure. I actually have some severe trust issues stemming from Fire Emblem, but we'll get there in the pitch. See that little, is that a red herring? I don't really know my figurative devices.
Is that a red herring is when you suspect someone of doing something? Or when an author presents a narrative in a way that you suspect.
It's a cock tease. I just cock teased. That's
okay.
That's the one.
Yeah, cock tease and a red herring are not
you
the same thing. You
foreshadowed. If you
foreshadow. Yeah.
Not even close.
It's one of the 3. I did that.
Yeah.
Fucking Grant. Grant's like, was that a metaphor?
Was that a cruel hand of God?
Hovering above?
Hovering above? Yeah, I was hoping you were going to pick it up.
Yeah.
Grant, are you going to play this Mario Kart game?
Well, let me tell you what. It's not necessarily a game. Okay. So,
are you going to participate in this Mario Kart way of life?
Yes, there we go. That's the jargon I like to hear. Headlines. For those who are completely unaware, Nintendo Direct happened a couple days ago. At least a couple of days ago from this airing of our podcast. It's celebration of Mario's 35th birthday, which just blows my mind. Andrew was a wee old senior citizen. But
yeah, I'd fought in 2 wars by that time. So
drafted twice over. But in celebration of Mario's 35th B-Day, the Nintendo Direct has come out with a series of Mario-based games and activities, yada, yada, yada. I didn't really read the other 2 things because what drew me in instantly was the Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. I don't know if you guys saw it, but essentially what they are going to do is you buy this RC racer with Mario or Luigi, aka Mario or the wrong one, and you can set up this RC racer with your Switch. I believe it's with your Switch, and you like set up a track in your living room, and then you can like race your kart with other people. It's basically like real life Mario Kart. I think this is the coolest shit. I don't know. As someone that is obsessed with like Double Dash and all these games, like this just brings all my my loves to life.
RC cars and augmented reality Mario.
I mean, that's essentially the pitch.
The way I had read it, and obviously shows that I probably didn't read it right. I thought it was like Mario Kart from a VR perspective or some shit.
Oh no,
And
no,
I was
you
like-
literally like.
I was like, that's terrible. That's a terrible idea. Why would anybody do that?
Well, it's gonna
but-
be. Yeah, go ahead.
No, but AR is definitely a good idea. That looks pretty sick.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting, right? Because like in the trailers or whatever, or at least the gameplay footage that they were showing like you get hit with a green shell and then your cart just stops until I don't know, like the window or whatever, or like whatever the animation you stop spinning ends. I have faith in Nintendo. Nintendo typically, whenever they try something new, that is a very, very, very rare win because they typically are pretty conservative. But when they do things new, they do it with full certainty that it's going to work. They put a lot of investment and time and energy into making sure that their new projects don't suck. So I have faith. I mean, it's $100.
And that's how I ended up with a Wii U in 2020.
Okay, the Wii U is a dark time, but
I thought it would be like an experience where, oh man, you'd be able to create your own courses and then share them online. And then I was thinking, that's going to be really creepy, showing the layout of your home to complete strangers to drive around in Mario Kart. And then I saw the actual concept, and I'm like, that's like way safer, but also not nearly as cool as I thought. But it's still cool. It's okay.
You were thinking like Super Mario Kart Maker?
Yeah, basically.
right.
In your house, in real life. But the AR, yeah, that's interesting. The cars look huge though.
Yeah, that's why I wonder. Well, it's 100. I didn't see how much it cost.
That's $100.
American dollars, 100 euros.
Oh,
which
so
is
it's more. It's more.
so it's some other amount that is more than the US dollar.
Fucking euros ruin it for everybody.
Exactly. Yes, elitist dollar.
Euros are just an elitist.
If you guys have ever played with, like, my nephews have these tracks, like, you can get them. You don't play them on your Switch. You control them from your phone,
Right.
which is probably more powerful than a Switch at this point. But you will control them, so the $100 is probably not. I'm sure that the size of the car was more for the benefit of the presentation in the video, not that they'll actually be that size, but also the $100+ will be from Nintendo tax, probably forcing you to buy a new game or software to run it.
Yeah.
So the combination of the few things will be overpriced and put out. Kind of like the Super Mario 3D All-Stars will be overpriced and put out for the amount of work that they did to it. Did you say you didn't look at anything else in that 35th anniversary direct?
It was very glossed over. I mean, I know what you're talking about, but like I didn't. Like I saw circuits and I was like, ooh.
Yeah. I was
We had
actually
the
primarily
opposite
thinking about
reactions then.
like how the size of those carts kind of make it, because there was a part in the trailer where the kid like drove under a slightly elevated, like, I don't know, cabinet or something, and I'm like, dude, that cart did not fit under that cabinet. You're such a liar. There's no way. Because if you had this like giant cart in your house,
Right.
there's only so many ways that you could create a circuit. The smaller, I think in this case, like the smaller the cart, the better. It would make for way longer circuits. I also wonder what like the limitation is as far as how big the circuits can be. Because I saw that there were checkpoints. There was a checkpoint system.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't expect it to be like more than a 30-second track. You know what I mean?
Can you use amiibos as like pedestrians or something? Do they?
That'd be funny. Shit.
Yeah, Ridley's just going to the grocery store and you just see your like
Skirt into peach. Transition.
Yeah. Maybe they'll add the Doomslayer to Mario Kart, and that way I can make this transition without putting in so much work. No, but they did finally get Doom. They did finally get a game to run at 1,000 frames per second, which I can't even I can't even visualize what that would be like, because for me, when you go from 30 FPS to 60 FPS, there's like very minor. I don't notice it. I actually don't notice frame rates. If you showed me like something going 1,000 frames per second, I doubt I could even tell you the difference. Like, could someone explain to me why more frames? Like, I get up to a certain point, like, I have seen videos of like, yeah, this is what it would look at 15 frames per second, and it's trash. But like, why is 1,000 frames per second necessary?
Would you rather have higher resolution or higher frame rate?
I would rather have a higher resolution.
You've been fallen into one of my classic traps.
Oh shit!
Because the internet disagrees with you.
Oh well, fuck the internet.
They do polls all the time to find out what people would rather have. They're like, why do I don't need, like, I see everything fine. What's the difference between 4K and 5K, like 8K, whatever? Like, I see everything crystal clear. I would rather be able to see things smoother and not have hiccups.
Right, but the human eye only processes visual information, like, I think up to 60 frames per second. Like, as far as, like, comparatively, like, there's only so much improvement. Maybe, what, you want, like...
Right, but things aren't really... Like, the Switch will barely run 30 frames per second.
Oh, well, yeah.
Again, going into the idea that your phone is more powerful than your Switch. Some PS4, Xbox games currently, like the big thing, I think, going into next gen is that they're going to be reliably running at 60 frames per second.
Allegedly.
Don't get me wrong, I don't know why anybody needs to overclock Doom Eternal to 1,000 frames per second. That whenever like I said, it feels very nauseating because that game is already moving very quickly and liable to give you motion sickness. But I mean, I guess it's cool that you did it. I don't see anybody ever using it or caring about it. It was
funny because they showed a video of the desktop running at 1,000 frames per second, and I'm like, but the video is at max 60 frames per second, so I still can't tell what the fuck I'm looking like. Right. I can't visualize. It's something you have to see to even understand why this is an achievement. Like, or at least for me, because I'm ignorant.
Friends, so you know, as much as I want to continue this conversation, and it's exhilarating, right? I'm gonna be honest with you guys because I respect y'all as people, and I really don't want to like come off as fake or anything. I have no idea what the fuck you're talking. What is it? I don't know what the difference between FPS and resolution and all this shit is. Please,
so resolution,
dumb it down for me all the way.
Is how clearly you can see something. So, for example, yes. I don't know if you've had like for example, I'm watching Starship Troopers last night, right? In preparation, and
Hush. Spoilers.
And is it
more red
spoilers
herrings
or foreshadowing, or is it a red herring? No,
that was definitely a cock tease.
But so I'm watching Starship Troopers, and my connection is shit. I have no idea why. And it's really blocky and fuzzy, like the entire image. Or it's like when you're on YouTube, and they have that little selection for like, you can watch this at 1080p or whatever the fuck. I don't know if you play around with that. But that's resolution. It's how clearly you can see something. Versus frame rate, which is how smooth the animation is. Like how many... A frame, it's like an animation frame.
Yeah, like the little block.
Imagine like a hand-drawn animation. Like they use exaggerating movements to give the illusion of like actual movement, but it's multiple frames for like a 1 second image, or for something you're only seeing for like 1 second. It's that many frames. So that's what a frame is. It's each individual image that's compiled to give you the illusion of movement.
Okay, so 1,000 seems like a lot.
Yeah, 1,000. It's 1,000 images in 1 second.
We standardly run, your regular TV runs at 60, but generally studies show that you're more comfortable around 30. But if you notice stuff like Days of Our Lives, soap operas weirdly, I think, run at 60 frames per second.
Do they really?
I think so. I may be off base.
The pinnacle of television.
It's fucking
like
crazy.
Your TV that looks hyper realistic if you happen to look, stuff that looks like it's on TV is generally at a lower frame rate. Stuff that looks like you could walk into TV into another room, that's a higher frame rate.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen a few shows or like a few films where it seems super realistic, but almost like nauseatingly realistic. I don't know. I guess that's what the higher frame rate is, like when it almost seems like right there.
This makes me think about, like, what's the standard frame rate for nature documentaries? Some random-ass question. I'm going to look that up.
What is our...
Well, the Google Operate has... People also ask about the frame rate for Days of Our Lives. People also ask, what is the frame rate of real life? So it's...
That's a great question.
Well, yeah, I think it caps out at about 60 frames per second, actually. That's how fast our optic nerve is able to, like, relay visual information to our brain, and how fast we're able to interpret it.
So then how can we process something that is 13 or 14 times
greater
16 times? I don't know math.
That's what I'm saying.
A lot more.
Like, did you know, for example, this is like a complete aside, but did you know that octopuses actually don't... Octopi? No, it's octopuses. It's definitely octopuses. They actually don't get fooled by looking at, like, videos. Like, other animals would. If you showed, like, a lion, a video of, like, a gazelle on a big enough screen, and we're able to, like, hide the borders, the lion might think that there's actually a gazelle there. Octopuses don't do that. So 1,000 frames per, because their visual processing is, like, so much more advanced. So I guess that's the goal, is to make a Doom Eternal that an octopus can play.
Interesting. Well, this educational piece was sponsored by the Pitch Pod. Thank you for tuning in.
So, in order to run the thing at a 1,000 frames per second, you have to worry about, the computer catching fire. What would be emblematic of that?
Yeah.
A Fire Emblem, perhaps. Grant, take it away.
Oh, Andrew. Da-da-da-da-da-da. That is perfect. Transitioning to our next pitch. My pitch, Fire Emblem. Yes, that is right. We are going to be talking now about Fire Emblem, the entirety of the series. If you can recall from our last episode, each of us decided to play the new-ish, I guess it's been like a year and a half now since the release, but of Fire Emblem Three Houses, and then we each took the opportunity to play one of the retro games that was released in English. So what we, I guess, came to the realization, sometimes you guys don't, I guess we shouldn't have expected everyone to read and or watch and or play the stuff that we do. So I guess we'll give you a very brief explanation rundown of our pitch. This is not a history podcast, but in terms of mild synopses, Fire Emblem released 1990, the series by Shuzo Kaga. I probably butchered that, but has a history of games, most of which were only localized in Japan, but starting with Fire Emblem 7 has been released consistently in America. The basic tenets of the game, I guess what makes it different, are a various variety of things. It's kind of like RPG simulation in a way. You move pieces on a grid and then watch as they battle, and essentially, like, it's not chess, but it's chess, because that's the only comparison that I can make right now. Other tenets of the game are the support systems, having characters talk to each other and bond throughout the game and listening to their conversations, and then the very infamous permadeath. Whenever your character or a character in the series dies, they're dead. This isn't Pokemon. There's no fainting. There's no coming back to life Jesus moments. There is death, and then you will die. So the series came to with FE7, had moderate success, but really started to blow up with Fire Emblem Awakening, which was released nearly a decade ago now. crazy enough, and has really been spiking in popularity exponentially ever since. Did a little bit of minute research. The two most recent or most popular releases, Fire Emblem Three Houses, the game that we're talking about, had 2.87 million copies sold, which blew everything else out of the water. And then Fire Emblem Heroes, which I have never played, but is on the phone. Phone games are trash, standing by that, has grossed about 70% of Nintendo's billion-dollar phone game industry. So it's popping.
Yeah, it's worth noting Nintendo no longer in the phone game industry. They announced they're going to get away from that. So all that success, they don't want to replicate it.
Damn. So that Pokemon game is dead?
No, the games are still there, just they don't want to put out any new ones.
Okay. Gotcha.
And they'll still license stuff out, I'm sure. We'll have Pokemon, because Nintendo doesn't have the exclusive rights to Pokemon, so.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a shame. Not really. Phone game's trash. But the reason why I chose this as my pitch, I think it's pretty well stated, if not so too much so, that I do not play too many video games, but this one has had a very large impact on me. I, like essentially every single North American boy, grew up with Fire Emblem through playing Super Smash Bros. Melee and not knowing who the hell these two were in the game with the swords.
Sword boys.
That being Marth and Roy. Roy's boy. Then, when I was probably a wee lad of 11, 12 years old, I accidentally borrowed and never gave back Fire Emblem 7 from my buddy. Sorry, Jackson. Just took the game because, it looked interesting. And I was hooked pretty instantly. I didn't really understand any, the gameplay. I was kind of just moving pieces around and having fun with it. And then I remember one of my characters dying pretty early on and then not having them come back in the next game or the next level. And I was like, why? What? So yeah, after FE7, having a pretty fun time with it. A few years back, I got Awakening for the 3DS and really started to fall in love with the series and what it does and what it can do. We'll talk about story and stuff. It's not a story heavy game, but the characters were so lovable and enjoying. And at a time when I needed friends, those were my friends. So speaking of friends, Andrew, I think we bonded over this game. This is how we became friends. Is that safe to say? Yeah,
that was our first real random conversation at work. We were just kind of off to the side, alienated by, I think, an office party that was going on. I think strangers were in the office at the time.
Suzette's retirement party.
Yeah, so we were just kind of talking. I mentioned listening to a podcast, and it was this very, very bad Fire Emblem podcast that had terrible quality. Audio quality problem we don't have.
No, sir.
And sporadic installments. They put out an episode once a year and we're trying to run a Patreon so that they could do more episodes. I'm like, dudes, you don't have a proof of concept. I'm not throwing money at you. Also, you sound like 12-year-olds. So anyway, I'm not going to say which podcast it was. It's the only Fire Emblem podcast dedicated to actually Fire Emblem and not Heroes. But, Anywho,
we're not calling you out.
And I was like, I've been interested in this real niche game called Fire Emblem. And Grant was like, it's only my favorite game of all time. And yeah, we had our stepbrothers. Did we just become best friends moment?
Hell yeah.
I think I had just bought into the idea that I was going to get 3 houses and had bought Awakening over the weekend and suddenly wanted to know everything about Fire Emblem. So, and then serendipitously, we got the...
Video games change lives, guys.
But not fun.
This whole podcast is because of Fire Emblem. So, anywho, that is essentially our relationship with the game. I know Victor is a little less experienced, doesn't have as much of a warm attachment to the franchise.
Not particularly.
He got to sit through it and play with us.
Yeah, it was cool getting to see how the series has progressed, because my only exposure again outside of Melee was the original Game Boy Advance game that was released in the States. I think it was the 4th one in the series or something.
7
is the 7th. That's a lot. That's a lot to decide. That's a lot of games to pass before you decide you want the American audience to like take a swing at it. That's a lot. But in any case,
Well, it's all in it. None of them are connected, so.
yeah. At the very least, they're like standalone. They just share the common theme of there being a Fire Emblem and however it exists.
Well, that was the kind of confusing thing, and Victor, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Good.
You know, the funny thing is, so like everyone was obsessed with Marth and Roy, right? And so Roy is like the redhead, and so when everyone got Fire Emblem 7, they're like, oh, cool, this is Roy. But in reality, it was Roy's dad. And Roy wasn't even playable because Roy was playable in the prequel, which was Fire Emblem 6. And so everyone's just like, what? Who the heck is this other dude?
This Roy cosplayer. But yeah, I played that. And then, for the first times I played Path of Radiance and then Three Houses. I did not play either to completion. I did not have the time to play the way I wanted to.
Yeah, and when you have only a few weeks to play a couple games, and you have jobs and life and other things, I would be kind of scared if you were able to finish one of these games because they are girthy boys.
Yeah, for real. But I liked them. Thought it was interesting. I personally would maybe consider playing Three Houses again. Mm-hmm. Just because of the different story options. But I mean, again, I didn't even finish the one I was on, so
right. No, we'll get into like all sorts of different facets of the experience. Just for the sake of like reminder's sake, each of us decided to play Three Houses, and then we each picked our own different retro game to see how the series has progressed over time. I guess that's what I wanted to talk about first. Andrew, like, how do you feel, for better or worse, the series has changed?
I think the series is in the best form that it's in. I think that's the main thing you see with really a lot of the Switch games coming out seem to be like Breath of the Wild. Heavy argument that that's the best Zelda that's ever been. Super Mario Odyssey was amazing. Possibly the best Mario that's ever been. At least 3D Mario. 2D is a whole different beast that I don't want to deal with. But, and I think Fire Emblem is, again, the perfect version of that, is probably the perfect version of that game. Doing what you could do. I liked the kid mechanics, but the kid mechanic of Awakening, but the kid mechanics get weird. Like, it was very unique to Awakening, which Awakening was supposed to be the end of the series. That's why it has so much lore associated with it, and why it kind of ties back to Marth in the first Fire Emblem. Is they were ready for it to be the end, but then it sold gangbusters and was their first real big success.
Exactly. Revived the franchise in its entirety.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I would love if we got actual real good They've started doing some remakes of the older games, but I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. So Grant, you talked about Kaga and the Kaga games. I don't think we got no Western game was a Kaga game. Like, he was already gone by the time 7 and the GBA game and the Game Boy Advance game came out. So all American games, number one, they nerfed the difficulty for us in general when they brought it over. And then on top of that, they got rid of the guy who was just obsessed with making it as hard as possible.
Yeah. Kaga had a vision. It's a love-hate relationship with Kaga, from like many of the fans of the series. I mean, like the super diehard fans, as per any video game franchise, the writer dies, or like, oh, the original creator's vision is the only vision, and those games are the best, and everything that follows is dating simulator trash, which is only half true. But it's a love-hate relationship in my eyes, just because, like, you're right. He started the series, and I mean, this series that has meant so much to me, but at the same time, those games are, like, he was obsessive in his dream and his vision. And I think if the series remained in his hands, the franchise wouldn't have the success that it has now. Not just commercially, but, like, critically. Like, these are, in my eyes, just better games. Yeah. What, I guess, were you saying something?
I was going to say, I think for me, somewhere maybe the really perfect version. The going around, I thought the teacher going around the monastery thing for Three Houses was very good, especially for the first few months you're doing it. Really great. And then tedium sets in, and so if there was a way to still get the benefit, like the great thing about older Fire Emblem games is you're going battle to battle. Like whereas with Three Houses, there will be nights where you don't, like, you just do monastery stuff. There's not, if you're devoting your half hour to an hour to video games for the evening, you may not get to fight anybody. Which I love the characters and the interactions in Three Houses, and seeing those people, like the supports, and seeing people's characters develop. I thought that was the real strength of Three Houses, to the point where when I would play, and then my fiance would go, "Oh, are you playing with your babies?" I was like, "Shut up! I gotta protect them."
Yeah. No.
So, I think characters are a real when the games that people remember are the games that have very good characters. Like, nobody talks about Fates. The characters in Fates, not that great. But we remember. Also, I guess, the characters that are in Smash.
Overall, these games are, as much as I enjoy and have fond memories of the stories and playthrough, and even really Three Houses, while the revenge plots are cool, the overall stories themselves, I didn't really care about. It was always about the characters, whether it was the lords and their development throughout the game, or you have your favorite people that you recruit and watch them interact with the rest of your party. That inter-game development, that's all I really cared about, and still to this day, that's what I obsessed over. I mean, I was the type of guy in my early playthroughs years ago. I also had the Wii U, the Game Boy ports, and I would literally go through and set up multiple save files and write down every single possible connect so I can optimize, like, making sure that each character was able to support each character. Because back in the old games, you had limited supports. Not everyone was able to support each other. So you had to, like, make sure that you could connect to characters without isolating others.
Yeah, what I learned about playing FE7 was that I do not like the old support system. It was way too hard to develop supports. I had no idea when I was doing it, who I was doing it with. Often I would miss that they were unlocked.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a way more of an obscure mechanic in the older game, in Final Fantasy, in Fire Emblem 7.
Nice. I think right. I think it's totally valid that it is a more obscure part of the system. It is more of like almost a bonus feature instead of like a principle of the game that is the newer ones. I think, though, at least someone that started with the old games first, or at least with 7 first, and then was able to go up the ladder versus y'all descending downward. With my experience, I do appreciate the older games because instead of supporting or getting those conversations unlocked outside of the battle, you do it in battle, and there's almost more of like an oomph to it, more of a punch. It feels more realistic. Some of the conversations are important, and like because there are so few of them, most of them mattered, right? Not saying that either system was better, but I think there is definite merit to the old ways, and I can understand why so many fans passionate of the older generations appreciate that style more. The games are different, for sure, but one thing that, like, it's kind of transitioning to that topic is like the stylization of the games has changed, and I guess, as I mentioned earlier, the main criticisms that some have is that it's become almost a conversation simulator and less of a strategy combat game. And I wanted to hear your guys' opinion of that, because as someone that I see what they're talking about. Whenever with the old games you would get a critical hit, for example, or even just like attacking someone, like the sprite animation was so cool.
Yeah.
And it was so simplistic, but every hit you felt the weight of it. Whereas now the combat, the strategy that's been kind of put on the back burner is still there. I'm not going to ignore that or say it's not. But I want to get your opinion on like the difference between the stylization of both games.
Well, for me, when you say, like stylization, I guess I'm still a bit like murky, because for me that implies like just the visual presentation of everything. And if we are talking about that, then I mean the Fire Emblem game I played for this was Path of Radiance, the GameCube game, which as compared to like the Game Boy Advance game, it's the same. For me, it's basically the same, just in 3D, which is fine. Although I did prefer the 2D just aesthetically, because it's way more brilliant. Like the colors are nicer. Path of Radiance did not age well visually, in my opinion.
I can definitely see.
Yeah, it doesn't even have like I can't even describe the visual style to you. It's like it's just not as pretty. I do think that there were some improvements to the game, like you can actually before you had to shop in the middle of a fight, which seems like the worst time to want to acquire new items. You don't want to go to the Target when it's already burning. You know what I mean? You want to fucking get in, buy your shit comfortably, and then leave. Like who wants to do that in the middle of a fight? But as far as like Three Houses is concerned, the gameplay changes, I thought it was an interesting mix-up. My exposure to the Fire Emblem series had me dealing with the weapon triangle this entire time, and the magic one as well. And then all of a sudden that was gone, and I'm like, all right. I think it opens avenues for more tactical complexity. I'm very confused, or not confused, but it astounds me how like there's no real like terrain advantage in Fire Emblem games. Like
there was in the old games.
Like did they take in consideration like
too.
differences in height and things like that? For example, like, I have the higher ground, therefore I get an attack bonus for this for defenses and whatnot.
And there's mountain terrain or forest terrain.
Well, it was hard. I remember it being hard to attack into and attack from, but I don't know. It kind of reminded me of like Civ 5 in that aspect. But
I think it mostly centered around a void. Like, it's easy. You're right, Victor. Yeah. I think the terrain mostly centers around how hard or easy you are to hit, not... I have the high ground, Anakin, or the low ground.
Yeah, I have the high ground. It increases my range for certain weapons, or I can set up like there's no ambush tactics that you can have other than like using the fog of war. So I think tactically the Fire Emblem series has stalled just like a little bit. As far as like going around the schools and like I barely had time to get to the time skip. Like, I'm just like, what the fuck? I personally,
there's so much more.
I see it as like an interesting reach. It's kind of like Game of Thrones, right? In Game of Thrones, you have the complexity of a battlefield going on, and then you have the political complexity going on simultaneously. And I think Fire Emblem really tried to get something like that going, and I can appreciate that. Maybe they should work on it so it isn't so JRPG-y.
Strong disagree as someone who loves JRPGs.
But because for me it had like real Persona 5 vibes.
No, it definitely definitely is modeled after that, this game.
Yeah, I liked the combat and I liked the interaction with my students, but I was just like, maybe this is a bit much. Just a little bit.
It's a tale of two games.
Right.
Like, the two games are very distinct.
Dreadfully
whenever
distinct.
You're in combat and battle, it feels like a Fire Emblem game. And whenever you're outside of it, it feels like a slice of life, Atlas-inspired fishing and gaslighting, or not gaslighting, grooming students for
harvesting crops
after the time skip.
Tea times.
Real creepy.
Yeah, well, the tea times.
So creepy.
I think what I wanted to when I mentioned stylization, I guess I wanted to kind of speak on the breadth of options in Three Houses versus the retro games, right? Because there is so much in the new game, Three Houses. I mean, it is insane how much. I mean, you could play hundreds of hours of Fire Emblem and of Three Houses and scratch the surface of the game. I think like what many people, including myself, respect the old games for, and I refuse to stake a claim as to what is the better because I think both have their merits. But do you think that there is potentially too much in the newer games, in the sense that is there a mystique for limiting the amount of conversation and the amount of like things that you can see into the game, the subtext per se? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's valuable. I'm glad that they stuck to that decision. Personally, you see like the how the game has like a casual mode that like totally gets rid of permadeath, and you even have that like one ability that lets you go back in time.
Yeah.
I hate them. I hate them both. I think that it's a way of saying, hey, our entire game is built around the fact that there's permadeath. Like, it's something that's a core sign of Fire Emblem. But if you don't like that, you don't have to play with it. I think that is a weak choice. Whereas, you know, the limit of the amount of conversations you can have, the people you can see, the perspectives you have, that's interesting. Because now I have to play it again if I want to see it from a different perspective.
Andrew?
All right, Victor hates fun again. We're back to our status quo. I don't care that there's a casual mode. Anybody can play. However, I set games on easy all the time because I don't care about it. Like, I want to play a game and enjoy it how I want to enjoy it. I don't want to gatekeep anybody from the series if they're like, permadeath, I want to check this out. If they play it, if they get good, then they can go back. But I don't want to put a gate up of intimidation. Like, the series is still there. It still can be known for permadeath. It's still telling you, hey, we are this game. But it's also saying, come on in, see how the water is, see how it treats you. Like, Three Houses wouldn't have sold like it did, and the series wouldn't have had new life if it had kept those gates up. So,
no way.
I mean, it could have continued to be the very hard game that only had permadeath, and we wouldn't be talking about it because it would have ended at Awakening. So, I don't have a problem with those changes. I never want to play a Fire Emblem game without a way to turn back time again, because the alternative, nobody accepts the death of their characters. Everybody just hard reboots the stupid system. Or goes back to an earlier save state, depending on what you're playing.
No, I actually...
Isn't that part of it, though? Like...
Well, that's the thing, man. Because, like, in my old replays, in every single game I've ever played, I always play on classic mode. Because that is what Fire Emblem is, and casual mode's for casuals. And I'm not a casual, but every single time a character died. Even a character that was fodder. Even when Ignatz died... And he died so many times because that character sucks. Sorry.
I love Ignatz.
But even when that happens, I reset the game because I can't afford to lose all of my characters. And so those resets are annoying as absolute hell. So like the time wheel, I respect. And if people want to play casually, which I still won't, but like I totally get it. With my current playthrough, I decided to play Fire Emblem 8 Sacred Stones. The Game Boy Advance game, second game to be released in the States. It wasn't until I decided to play traditional classic, if you die, you die, that I realized how bad I am at this game. Chapter 1, I lose my knight. Like, I just, like, forgot that you can't just, like, send people to oblivion and, like, if they die, they die. You know what I mean? I am on currently Chapter 12. I have lost the game, aka my main character, who is supposedly the strongest character in the game. I've lost this game 6 times, and it's Chapter 12. And yeah, I suck at Fire Emblem. So I totally get the need for casual mode. I totally get the need for like monkey brain players such as myself that really just want to have the characters talk to each other.
I don't know. Darkest Dungeon might have like spoiled me as far as like arguments against permadeath. I think permadeath really enhances the game. I actually think that if they doubled down on the permadeath to prevent save scumming, it would do a lot more for the series. That should at least that I'm willing to concede. If they have a casual mode, that's fine, but I want a hardcore mode where I can't save scum. I also want the other side of the spectrum there.
Why couldn't you just do that to yourself?
Because I don't have the discipline for it, Grant. Nobody does. Everybody just talked about how they did it. I did it whenever I played the Game Boy Advance game. I had to force myself to do it for houses, but it was hard. I would rather the mode just be there. So it's like, hey, if you have a problem with the temptation, we'll remove it for you. That I would appreciate. If they were like, yeah, it auto saves. You can go fuck yourself. Like, I like it. I like it when games tell me I'm trash, and then I have to just deal with them.
We also have to remember this is the Nintendo franchise.
Yeah, I get it. Overcoming the adversity of the challenge isn't necessarily like something that Nintendo is.
It's about the adventure, man.
Yeah, that's fair. But that's where I'm coming from. Like, I'm totally fine with there being the casual mode, but I think that they should maybe compensate by making the classic mode exactly what it's supposed to be. Like, if you have a vision, stick to it, you know?
That's fair.
They kind of get around some of that stuff in the, like, if you notice, if you turn back time or save scum, I don't know how far back this goes, but if you turn back time or save scum and you do the exact same thing, if you're like, they're not going to hit that 10% shot again, they're going to hit that 10% shot again.
Yeah.
If you set it up that turn. Like, at the start of the turn, stuff's locked in. So you can't, like, you are limited in your scumming. And Three Houses might have even set it up more so that if you went back a couple of terms and you still set up the same scenario. I don't actually remember because I'm good at the game. So
can't relate.
But to your point, Grant, and this goes to the thing that very few of the games have interconnected story, but Three Houses, and you can argue that the old support system is part of in-game lore. Like, you get to find out all these stuff, whereas I don't really consider the support systems as they exist in Three Houses as part of lore. I think it's character building. And every now and then you get some interesting lore with, like, Flayn and Seteth, but I think that the in-game lore of Fire Emblem is very interesting to me. I've played the game 4 times through. I've beaten the game 4 times, and every time I go into the library and read every single book again. So I find the history that they're making fascinating. So, and the world that they build. Don't get me wrong, you mentioned you could play for hundreds of hours and not scratch the surface. I've played for hundreds of hours. I've gotten every ending. I know what happened in Fire Emblem. If you have questions on the story, I will entertain them.
Andrew is a Fire Emblem savant.
Three Houses. Yeah, Three Houses. I will not claim any expertise on anything else, but I feel pretty comfortable in my ability to answer questions on Three Houses. At least in terms of what they have answered us. Not anything related to the expansion. The Ashen Wolves was fan fiction garbage.
The DLC, yeah. That's one thing, I mean, that Nintendo has been big on lately, and that was the issue with Fates as well. It's just like their DLC prices are, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, it's 25 games for a few chapters, or $25 for a few chapters.
25 games for a few
25 games for $4. No.
That'd be a weird metric for payment. They're like, yeah, you need to trade in 25 of your games.
Not outside of the realm of Nintendo possibility, quite frankly. They do some wacky stuff.
Yeah, some zany things. One thing I do want to mention, I think, because we kind of we touched on it a little bit with the Nintendo, like, this is Nintendo, it's not super hard, or like, it's not all about the challenge per se. What I will say is that for Nintendo, the games are actually kind of dark comparatively.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that shit is crazy.
It's not necessarily the E for everyone that Nintendo is necessarily known for. Is Three Houses E or is it T?
Pretty sure it's T. There's a guy whose family.
That's pretty deservingly so.
What is his name? Dimitri. What? His entire family was killed in front of him and 5 years later he becomes a monster. Like, well, yeah, dude, there's no way this is E for everyone.
In one version. Actually, that's in like 2 or 3 versions. Yeah.
Says the master.
Yeah. No, it's very dark.
Yeah. No, I mean, even as much as like in that, in the intro scene of Three Houses, you just see the baddie just getting murked. Just getting stabbed repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly over and over again. In my game, there's a storyline where there's this character, and this is kind of what I mean, like the character interactions, less about the plot, 'cause it's not like a plot focused element, but just about like the characters. There's one chapter in my game where you have 4 characters and you go against an army of about 35. And so you just feel like a badass as you're just barreling, bulldozing through all these freaking noobs, right? And then at the end of the chapter, one of your characters betrays you. And it's just like, what? Right? What it turns out is that he betrays you in order to get his wife back and get resurrected from the dead, but she's not actually resurrected. She becomes like the zombie, and like he loses his mind in reaction to seeing her in this disheveled state. And that was an E for everyone game. And like looking back now, kind of jeepers creepers me as a 23-year-old man.
Zombie wife drives man insane.
Yeah,
that's also the plot of the DLC.
Zombie wife drives man insane. What is it about seeing loved ones come back as zombies that drive people insane? Like,
I mean, I don't really know what else you were thinking. What do you expect?
I mean, I'd be bummed out, but I'd be like, well, they're a zombie. You got to take care of that shit. Like, it's not.
Drats.
You know, I don't know.
I mean, they made the whole Netflix show for the Santa Clarita diet. Yeah, I mean, in Three Houses, Mary Ann has, like, the cursed thing that she's worried she's going to become a monster. Mm-hmm. And if you're playing against her, you find out that she does. And, of course, Edelgard's group as Nazi fascists, enslaved her to be a demon. And then if you play against the Golden Deer through another route, it turns out Marianne is not there, and since she was basically suicidal before, you get to draw your own conclusions about what happened to her. And I think it's that she's dead. She killed herself.
Yeah. Spoilers, Victor.
So that's the interesting thing about you get to see your influence as a character.
Damn. And I joined the Nazis too. I joined the Fire Emblem Nazis. I didn't know they became the Nazis. I was like, this is cool. Black
I didn't either. Dude, they were my first
They're
pick.
the Black Eagles. It should have been the number one thing on my mind. Fuck.
That should have clued you in.
Black Eagles, huh? I'm like, damn, oh shit. They're the Nazis. My bad.
So, yeah, Fire Emblem, full of just draw your own conclusions to horrible things. But it is good because you get to see your influence as a character on your students. Like, if you're playing the Blue Lions, then you get to help be part of Dimitri's redemption story. You get to work with Marianne and not have her be a demon beast. So you get to see your influence on everyone's lives. And if you're in the Black Eagles, I hope you recruit her so that she does not have to.
Yeah.
Or maybe don't recruit her. Leave Marianne alone. She's a precious child and should be protected.
Is that your?
Also, you should recruit Lysithea in every run. That's my pro tip for Three Houses: is always be recruiting Lysithea.
Easy money. Yeah, no, she wrecks things. In the old games, they not the old games, but like in Awakening and Fates, which you should definitely play eventually. Maybe we'll stick to Awakening. Fates is whatever. But I mean, every character is marriageable, and then you get to play with their kids, and so like it mattered entirely. Well, it didn't really matter. The only difference, because the kids would always be the same, but just their hair color would change based off of who was the dad. But you got a little customizable there. So, anywho, overall, what would your recommendation be? Not just play, no play, but like what would your overall recommendation be for this series?
If you like the battle parts, definitely look back at of Three Houses. You should definitely look back at the older games. If you like the battle parts, I mean, Fire Emblem's influence is all over the place. They make that specific strategy sprite style is very popular, now.
Mm-hmm.
So I did less playing of Three Houses and more playing of a few Fire Emblem inspired games as part of my week. So I was playing Wargroove, which is definitely in that same area of Fire Emblem, sprite-based. I was playing the Mercenary Chronicles a while back. I just bought the Banner of the Maid, which is supposed to be a very good one of those things, tile-based strategy games.
Yeah.
It's like Final Fantasy Tactics-esque. That's my earliest games were Pokemon and Grand Strategy games. So I very much gravitate towards all of Fire Emblem, all of Three Houses. Like, give me more JRPG turn-based combat.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I think, overall, if you are interested in the series, I think Three Houses is a fantastic jumping off point, or leading off point, whatever the allegory and metaphor thing is. Once again, figurative language, not my strength. But I think it's a great starting place. And then if you find yourself into it, jumping on. Thank you, Andrew. If you find yourself into it, give the retro games a shot. They mean so much to me. I think they're fantastic the way they are. Both arguments as to which genre or which era is better have merit, but you should play the game regardless. Moving on. After a girthy talk like that, after a very lengthy talk? Whatever. Andrew.
Yeah. So, in 2 weeks, here is my pitch for what we will come back to discuss. A real-world scenario where authorities exercise judge, jury, and execution, not pulled from current events. We are headed to Mega City. I think 1 is where we're at in the first one. But we are going to take a look at Dredd, which feels way too culturally relevant for a sci-fi movie about a mostly quiet, faceless protagonist who murders criminals. Feels way too relevant for our times, so to try to even that sauce out, we're gonna do a supplemental, and we're gonna watch Starship Troopers as well, just to try to talk more about how satire works in some of these movies. Dredd is the main thing I want to talk about, but we're gonna just kind of stir in some Starship Troopers to keep us from preaching too much about social injustice, because we're here for fun, or we'll stick with fun and whatever Victor's here to do. And we're not experts in the field, and Victor hates fun.
That is going to be all for us. Andrew has just pitched us on Dredd and Starship Troopers. As he mentioned earlier, what we are going to be doing is moving on from, instead of releasing weekly, we will be releasing bi-weekly every other week. So on that note, thank you all for listening. This has been fun so far. We're about 5 episodes. We are 5 episodes deep, and we're learning throughout this process, but it's been a fun process in my opinion. Anywho, make sure to follow this podcast. Spread the word. Follow us on social media, which we do have now, right? Hey, yes, I did it. Finally. At least it will be live by the time that this episode is released. At Twitter, at pod_pitch. Instagram, The Pitch Pod. YouTube, The Pitch Pod. Make sure to follow us on social media, all platforms. Make sure to follow this podcast, like I mentioned. Spam us with all your questions, thoughts, criticism, hate mail, love mail. Leave a review. Tell a friend. Interact with us. Spend the next couple weeks obsessing over Dredd and Starship Troopers. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait to not actually see you guys in a couple weeks, because that's not how podcasts work, but I can't wait to talk about it. Keep space for